All right, where we last left off in our last video a couple of weeks ago, we showed you guys our brand new truck, what truck we chose, what we're gonna put in it, what the layout's gonna be, how we're gonna pack it, all that kind of thing. If you haven't seen that video, we'll link it down below. But this video is a little bit more of what we're really excited about, which is more of the route planning and the dreaming and the getting excited about where we get to go. But unfortunately, that comes with a lot of paperwork.
I need to get to the paper, please.
And a lot of red tape and figuring out cost, budget, visas, all that kind of thing. So we're gonna kind of run through what we know so far and just outline our strategy and all the different components that make overlanding international possible. So if you're looking for something specific, whether it be traveling with a dog or a route, all the time codes are down below, so be sure to check that out if you just wanna skip to a section. We wanna take a second and say thank you to this week's video sponsor, which is Aura. We'll talk about that more in a minute though. For now, we're gonna jump right into our route. And this is probably the heftiest section of this video because I think it's just the most exciting. The short answer is that we're planning on starting with Asia, assuming we can get the truck on a shipping container headed overseas by mid-December is sort of the goal. So we'd love to put it on early November, mid-November, sometime in there. But if it can't be on by mid-December, we're gonna have to start looking at maybe doing Australia or Europe first instead. Let's just go ahead and assume that we're gonna make the mid-December deadline to get it to Asia, and just everything we're gonna talk about now is gonna be regarding Asia. There are 3 different places that we are contemplating starting, and all of this has to do with what borders are open, cost of what we can afford by the time we're done building out the truck, and how much we feel comfortable spending on, carnet de passages, which we'll talk about in a little bit. For now, the 3 different points that we're thinking about beginning are Japan, Malaysia, and India. Now, Japan would be the ideal first spot, but right now, Japan's borders are not open for tourists to go individually. Right now, you have to be on a group trip if you are going. Well, we would not be doing that. We'd be driving ourselves. So unless they open, Japan is not an option. If they do open, we will start in Japan, and then we will take a 3.5-hour ferry ride over to South Korea and check out both of those countries pretty extensively. And then from South Korea, we would either ship it to Malaysia or to India. That would be the dream situation. We would love to do those 2 countries. Now, if Japan doesn't happen, we will be shipping to either India or Malaysia. Ideally, we would start in India. India is very expensive. You essentially have to put a 55% of your car's value in a bond that you do not get out until your car returns to your home country. Unless we have that extra money to put in a bond, or we get sponsored or something like that and we get some help on that, India may not happen. It just is a lot of money for 2 very hardworking people like us to put in a bond that we cannot touch in case of emergency, or if we want to invest it while we're overseas. It's just a long time to not be able to get to that money. And I'm just not sure that we're going to be in a place to where we can do that. We're still hoping, and we're still moving forward planning that Mumbai and shipping it there will happen. Best case scenario, we do ship to Mumbai. And from there, we'll sort of wind our way through all those countries, which I'm going to show you in just a second. But if India doesn't work, then it'll be Malaysia. So I'm going to go ahead and draw on the iPad. And a lot of this is weather dependent, border dependent, budget dependent, because the problem with doing India is not only is getting your truck to India expensive, but countries like Bhutan, Tibet, and Myanmar are all very expensive because they require you to have a guide. Actually, Bhutan does not require the guide anymore, but it is $200 a person per day to be in Bhutan. It's very expensive. We have a great contact of a guy who works with a lot of overlanders going from the USA over to India, and he would ship us directly in to Mumbai. Starting out there would give us a chance to go south to Goa if we wanted to, which we've heard is awesome, and then sort of work our way north to Jaipur, New Delhi, see the Taj Mahal, and then kind of just wind our way up into the border of Nepal. Nepal is one of those places we're dying to go. Nepal is pretty remote, but it's supposed to be amazing. It's actually relatively easy to get in there as a tourist. Even with a dog, we should be able to cross the border just fine. And then from there, where it gets a little bit more fuzzy about what we can and cannot do, we would love to go to Tibet. Now, Tibet is officially part of China, but Tibet is open for tourists again, but you do have to have an official travel guide with you. If we don't do this, it's gonna be more probably because of Kramer or just money, I guess. Yeah, that's a huge component always. And then from Tibet, we would possibly do Bhutan, but like I said, it's $200 per person per day to get into Bhutan. I think we'd be looking at going for about 2 days, and in those 2 days, it'd be $800 just for us to be there. So it's a little pricey. So we'd see there, we'd dip, say hello to Bangladesh, and then come back out to India, and then cross into Myanmar via the India border. It's supposed to be the safest one to cross into Myanmar. And then we would just sort of wind our way pretty quickly over to Thailand. Now, this is another one of those areas right now that it's presenting a little bit of a headache, and another reason why we may not start in India, besides just the expensive bond that India requires on your car, is that Myanmar is still not open. They are currently, their borders are just closed, so we can't even cross through. So if we do all these countries, India, Nepal, Bhutan, Tibet, all this kind of thing, we may have to find our way back to India and then ship it around to Malaysia. Now that would get expensive and it'd be complicated and time consuming. So if Myanmar doesn't open and we can't get the bond on the car for India, I think this segment that we just showed you may have to get the boot for a little bit longer, even though this is one of those regions that we really want to go to. It's just gonna have to be safe for a little bit longer. I'm gonna go ahead and show you leg 2 of the trip that will happen, whether it be instead of India or after India. Like I said, we will either ship into India and then drive through Myanmar and then cross in the border in Mae Sot, which is right there on the Thai-Myanmar border, or we would be shipping into Malaysia, into Kuala Lumpur area, and then crossing up from there. So either way, Thailand's sort of gonna be our first place we really visit. So if we start in Malaysia, we'll just sort of beeline our way up to Thailand, go see Chiang Mai, Chiang Rai, and then cross the border into Laos and explore that country for a bit. So a funny thing about Thailand is no matter if you're driving or flying, they do have a 30-day visa for tourists. I think you can apply and get a longer one just from the get-go, but for us and what we're doing and the driving and all the logistics of Thailand in general, we're just gonna go ahead and do the 30-day visa, and then every 30 days we'll have to leave the country and come back. So Thailand is one of the most complicated countries to overland in. They changed the rules in 2016 and added all sorts of new rules, such as you have to have an official guide with you and you cannot be bringing in campers or RVs or anything like that. It's very locked down, which is why we won't be taking a van. We're taking a very stripped down truck because it's not gonna be any sort of RV. It is just a truck with a tent, and that's allowed. Now, some border agents we've heard will let in anything like an earth roamer or whatever you're driving. It just depends on who you get. We're not willing to risk or break the laws in other countries, especially. So we're just gonna play it really safe. But that's one of the reasons why when people ask us, how long are you guys gonna be in Thailand? Like, we can't tell you. It really depends on, we may get in for 30 days and then have to leave, and then we may not get back in, or we may get back in for 90 days on a visa. We have no idea. This is all very much up in the air and requires a lot of flexibility when doing this sort of adventure. So we would enjoy Laos for a little bit while we are doing the visa run. We'd visit Vietnam, Cambodia, sort of just play around in this area for a bit and just explore Southeast Asia. And that's one thing we're really excited about, is just taking our time and seeing this area of the world from a more slow-paced, back road kind of way. That's our favorite way to travel. We know that in North America. And even when we've been abroad, our favorite moments have been the places that are a bit more removed and a little bit forgotten or a little less known. We'd eventually make our way back to Thailand and visit Bangkok, and then work our way back around the Gulf of Thailand and cross the border back into Malaysia. And this is really when we'd experience Malaysia and even dip down to Singapore if it allows. From there, we would take a ferry and cross over, and then we'd work our way down through to Indonesia. We'd visit Jakarta, work our way all the way down. There's Bali, we'd visit Bali, and we just go as far as we can. What a lot of people don't know is that there are little ferries like here and here and here and here. There's all these different ferries, and some of them are $5 up to I think $30, and some of them are as short as 30 minutes. So Indonesia is made up of tons of islands, but you can actually cross from one to another. And these areas are supposed to be relatively safe. So depending on how long we're in Southeast Asia, we may ship our truck from here back to the US. If it's time to get another carnet de passage, which you have to get every 12 months is our understanding, especially if we don't do the India section, we may ship our car down to Australia. Australia is very difficult. That's a whole nother topic in and of itself. Not sure what that would look like yet for us, but those are our two options. So that's sort of our route and what we're looking at. And if you're asking how do you plan your routes, really it's just a lot of word of mouth, like what's worked for other people. It's looking at points of interest on the map and trying to figure out what regions are safe, what are the road conditions like, a lot of Google Maps, a lot of Rio to Rome is one way you look to see where ferries are, and just Googling, like if you can zoom in real close on Google Maps and see there's the so-and-so ferry, you can Google that, find out the cost. I mean, it's a lot of just like nitty gritty. There's no fancy system that I found that will help you plan a route like this. It is really dependent on what you want, where you're trying to go, how you're trying to get there, and then just be willing to dig in deep and do the work. I will say though that, if Asia doesn't work, we'd be looking at doing either Europe or Australia. Both of those we would love to do, and I think they are on the list for one day. We're just sort of taking it one country, one continent at a time, and just figuring out, we don't know how long we're gonna be gone. So just one step at a time is sort of the plan.
All right, real quick, I need to interrupt this video because it's sponsored by Aura, which is this all-in-one Swiss Army knife identity theft VPN software. We're so thankful to be able to partner with Aura because we love using it while we travel. And one of the cool features is that it monitors the dark web to see how many times your username and password have been released. So right now I'm going to show you just how many times my personal information has been released on the dark web. So I'm logged in and my information has been leaked 41 times. That's fun. Look, don't put your family or any information at risk. To see if any of your passwords have been compromised, click the link down below. It'll help you, it helps us. It's a win-win for everybody. All right, so let's get back to the video.
We talked a little bit about this last time and why we chose our truck and wanting to keep it below 7.5 feet, and that was because we want to put it in a shipping container. There's a few different ways to ship a car overseas. Roll on, roll off is the cheapest, but it's the least secure, and going into some of the ports like in Southeast Asia, some of them are known to be kind of corrupt. So we want to put it in a shipping container where nobody can break in or harm our vehicle or things at all, because that could really mess up the trip pretty quickly if they take everything out of the car. They say to get from North America over to Southeast Asia, we're looking at around 5 to 6 weeks and around $2,000 to $5,000 US. To us, that is not a bad price, especially considering we'll have everything with us that we need. We're kind of like little turtles, just like we were in the van, but just even more stripped down. Like we have everything we need. A lot of y'all have asked about paying import fees, what that looks like for fees on the truck. Yes, we will have to pay in some ports, and we will have to pay at borders as we're crossing the borders, pay taxes and visitors visa fees and all that kind of thing. But because we are going to be tourists and we're going to be on a transient, sort of transient visa, visitor visa, tourist visa, we are not importing our car permanently. We are actually exempt from most import fees, is our understanding. It won't be charged the same capacity or the same level of fines as you would be if you were shipping your car to move to one of these countries. So say you are moving from the US to India and you want to take your Toyota Tacoma with you. Well, there's going to be a heavy import tax on that, or a heavy import fee on that, because you are bringing an entire truck to India that you could potentially sell, or it's going to be on the roads full time. But if you're just going in for a short period of time, that's sort of where like the bonds come into place, where they want to make sure that you are covered, that you're not going to just leave your car there, sell it. It has to eventually leave out of the country again. So they'll take your money, but they'll hold on to it. They won't take it for good. You get it back assuming you leave. And also every country has different requirements of how long you can be in the country. So like I said, for Thailand, it's 30 days and you have to leave. The EU, the European Union, you can be in the EU for 6 out of every 12-month period, and then you have to be gone. So you can kind of break it up, come and go, but you can only be in the EU with your vehicle for 6 months. That's something to note, because I think you could spend years really in any place, but especially Europe. All right, paperwork. So I've already mentioned the carnet de passage, and if you're not familiar with what that is, it is essentially a passport for your car. It's sort of an identification that says where you're from, where you're going. You pay fees on it, and it's sort of it's like your permit to get into a lot of countries. Some countries don't require it. Some you absolutely must have it. Even if they don't require it, we've heard it really helps getting across borders. If you do have one, just as like a verification, like, hey, we're just here, we're passing through, we're not staying. You can get those online. There's only one provider for them in the USA that you can actually go through and buy them. They are pricey, and again, it's country by country of how much it's going to cost you. You will be required to have proof of insurance, and this is one of those topics I don't really want to touch on yet because I'm still researching what insurance for your car is going to be best overseas, and it may be we have to get one for every country or for every continent. We're still learning about this. We've read a few things online, but truthfully it's still a little fuzzy. When we learn more, we'll get back to you. But for health insurance, some countries do require proof of health insurance because they don't want visitors to be a burden to the government or to the people of the country. So we will be using Safety Wing again. That's who we've used in the past while traveling. They're great for digital nomads, and they pretty much cover you anywhere in the world. Other paperwork, visas vary country to country, but it is something to keep in mind for extra fees. And as far as scheduling where you're planning on going, you need to know how long you're allowed to be in each country and then plan accordingly because you don't want to overstay your visa. International driving permit, or IDP as you may commonly see it called online. An international driving permit, there's 2 different kinds, and depending on what countries you're going to, you will need one or the other most likely. We have both. It's good for 12 months. You can get them at AAA. I want to say they're about $85. Safety and security. This is the one that I think our parents are most nervous about. Now, the places we're going, most of them are very safe. Most of the world is very safe. Yes, what you see on the news is a small part of what's actually happening in the world, but that doesn't mean you don't take precautions. You need to know what's happening, be aware of your surroundings, know what level of risk or what are the risks in the area that you're going to. So our number one place to check is travel.state.gov, which is the official travel website of the US, and this is going to be the most up-to-date. They update it very regularly to keep up with the different level of risk. Also, Facebook groups. Facebook groups are a great place to find information of other people's sort of lifetime reports of what's happening in an area. So there's a great international overlanding community out there, and we're gonna talk about that in a minute as far as resources. But find a Facebook group. They are usually dedicated by country or by region to tell you, so you can communicate with other overlanders who are going or who are there right now. And they may share information about troubles at border crossings or trouble they ran into in a major city, of things to be aware of. So that's a great way to go and communicate with other people who get what you're doing and are doing it at the same time. Now this is the topic that is definitely the most asked about, and that is about the dog, Kramer. Kramer is going to be going with us, and if you're new around here and you didn't know, Kramer has traveled internationally with us before. Back in the spring, we went from the US to Mexico, and then Mexico to Brazil, and then Brazil back home, and he went with us the whole way. And actually, it went really well. We didn't really run into any hiccups. Getting from Mexico to Brazil was a little bit of a learning curve, having to find a vet internationally to sign off on the health certificate, that kind of thing, but it really wasn't that bad. Thank you, Google Translator. There are a few things that we will definitely make sure Kramer is up to date on and that he has to be doing. Every country's different. That's like the common theme here, is always do your research because things are always changing and every country's gonna be different. There are a few things that Europe may require, like the microchip, but yet Asia doesn't, but yet Asia needs, certain countries in Asia will require a rabies titer test, like Japan, and I think Korea too, but yet Europe won't require it in most of the countries. So you really have to be up to date on everything, and we're just gonna always make sure everything's current for Kramer. You have to have your dog microchipped. They must be up to date on their vaccines, especially rabies, and you always have to carry a signed copy with you. For certain countries, specifically islands like Australia, Japan, the UK, and even Hawaii, they have to have a rabies titer test. Now, rabies titer tests usually take about 3 to 4 weeks to get back, but ours is going to take about 7 to 8 weeks. We've already had Kramer's test pulled and it is in the process of being tested now. The test is good for 2 years. So probably every time we come home, if it's once a year or something, we'll just go ahead and get that retested just so we're not worrying and stressing about it while we're overseas. They also must be treated for internal and external parasites. And this was the only thing that was a little fuzzy when we were traveling from Mexico to Brazil. Mexico said that what the treatment that we used for Kramer was not enough to cover what Brazil had. Hi Kramer, wanna hop up? You do need to treat your dog for internal and external parasites. So things like fleas, ticks, worms, and then in certain countries, including Finland, Malta, they will have to be treated for tapeworms as well. Right? Yeah, we haven't had to go through that yet though. The most complicated one of it though is a health certificate. Almost every single country is going to require that you show a health certificate from a accredited certified vet. Now, on top of having a health certificate from your vet, you sometimes have to send the health certificate off from the vet to the embassy of the country you're going to be traveling to, but it can only be within like a 10-day window before you arrive in the country, but they have to actually put a stamp on your health certificate for your dog and say, this checks out, we approve, let them on in. It gets really confusing really fast, and especially with the term country of origin. That's the term that kept confusing us, because at first I was like, well, country of origin, that's probably where we're from, where we hold passports from, where he was vaccinating, all of his vaccine records are from, but it's not. And this is why we had to go to a vet in Mexico, because country of origin is where you're flying from and to, which really makes a lot of sense because that's the stuff he's been surrounded by, that's where he's been most recently, and it's gonna be the most up-to-date information about who has seen Kramer and verified that he is healthy. That's what's gonna be really hard on the road, is finding a vet who hopefully can speak English. There is always a language barrier, but a lot of vets will speak English in major cities, and even the one we found in Mexico, he did a little bit. It was a little bit difficult, but thanks to Google Translate, it went mostly fine. We're supposed to have to go to a vet between pretty much every single country along the way, except in Europe, who has like the EU bubble, but for Asia, we're gonna have to get a health certificate from every country, which is gonna be very frustrating, a little bit expensive at times. In the US, you'll pay about $150 to $200 for health certificates, I believe. Overseas, at least in Mexico, we paid about $40 for the health certificate. Now, in some of these Facebook groups of overlanders who are traveling with their dogs, a lot of times they've said that pretty much if you have your vaccine records on you, your dog looks clean, healthy, well-groomed, safe, they'll look at the vaccine records, look at your passport, and pretty much let you on through. So we have heard that you don't have to have a health certificate every single time to get through customs, but we're just gonna go ahead and plan and assume that we will. So I've done some research already of vets in India and vets in Nepal and that kind of thing, so we have them if we need them. Oh, other thing, shipping, getting Kramer to the country. Kramer is small enough to fly in cabin under the seat in front of me, so he can travel as a pet. If you are traveling with a larger dog, they can travel in the cargo section. Now, I've always been scared to do that with our dog, but we actually talked to our vet who said that the situation and the conditions for dogs traveling in cargo areas have gotten a lot better over recent years. So if you're nervous about that, we'd encourage you don't have long layovers, which is sort of our vet's recommendation. She said just try to get them from point A to point B as quickly as possible. Don't let them be sitting on the tarmac, especially if it's hot, that kind of thing, because it will be stressful for your animal. That being said, you don't hear horror stories as often as what you used to. Like, the dogs are cared for much better by airlines now than what they used to be. Highly, highly, highly recommend finding a good vet at home who can sort of walk with you through this whole process. Our old vet didn't even do the health certificates. They did not want to deal with any of that. They actually tried to send us to another office, and it was not a great experience. We've recently found a new vet, and she's awesome. She regularly does health certificates for getting dogs and cats and everything around the world, and she understands everything that we're trying to do. She's awesome. So if she doesn't have the answer, she's really proactive about going and helping us find that answer, because she wants us to get there safely and enjoy having the adventure, which is really cool. So if you don't have that vet, highly recommend going to find one that can be there with you and really make sure that you're doing everything right. Last section is resources. This is very, very important, and I will say that the community of overlanding internationally is just, it's really, really cool and very thorough. And I think coming out of the van life bubble, at least stateside, is it's a lot more, for one, it's pretty much just North Americans doing it. But in the overlanding community, I'd say Americans are almost the minority of it. It's a lot of Europeans doing it. I mean, a lot of Asians doing it, a lot of everybody, but fewer Americans, which is really cool. So you're hearing all these really neat perspectives and experiences. Can make information a little bit confusing, because obviously every person's country of origin has different requirements and that kind of thing. Overlandassociation.org has been my favorite resource. This one came highly recommended while we were at Overland Expo 2. It has maps upon maps upon maps. It has a forum to go on. They have Facebook groups they've created, which are awesome, and they're divided by region. That's where the Overlanding with a Dog Facebook group is that I found. So much information, very helpful. Most of the information is pretty up to date. Some of it is outdated, so always do your research, but that is an incredible resource. Also, Overland Expo. Overland Expo was a great opportunity for us to go and to meet other overlanders who have had way more experience with this than us. We met people who have done Africa multiple times and who've done Asia and Europe and everything, and they are a wealth of knowledge from real life experiences that we don't have. While I want to be as much help to you guys as possible, truth is I haven't actually overlanded internationally yet. So those people are going to be a much better resource for you right now than what I can be. Now, I'm still happy to answer questions if you have them, but I'm very much in the learning process and I don't have that real world experience yet. I think that's pretty much it. The only other thing we were going to say is, if you're considering going overseas, internationally, overlanding, that kind of thing, do be committed to it. It is expensive, it is time consuming, and if you are not really up for the challenge in that type of adventure, definitely think twice about it, because it is already proving to be a lot of work for us. And we knew that going into it, but even more work than we expected, even more money than we expected. So definitely do your research, plan accordingly, and it's gonna be awesome. I'm really excited about it, but it's gonna take a lot of work. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the comments. If you have any advice, please drop that in the comments too, because we need help. If I said something here that you're like, oh, that's wrong, I've overlanded internationally, she's wrong, please let me know, because I'm always trying to learn and we could use the help. All right, that's it. Have a great week.
For behind the scenes and extra content, you can head on over to our Patreon community. Otherwise, be sure to follow on Instagram or like and subscribe here. It really helps creators like us.